Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Kelly. This is the session on application developer, computer science, and software programmer. Gentlemen?
I'm Chris Knapp. I'm the Information Technology and Media Talent Director with the Workforce Development Agency, State of Michigan.
And I'm Tom Knight, Office of Career and Technical Education. I'm a curriculum consultant, and IT is one of my areas that I oversee.
As I said, my name is Keith Kelly. I work for Northwestern Michigan Community College, and I run our Microsoft IT Academy. Today we're going to go through a discussion on. Today we're going to go through a discussion on really software developer. I use that word developer, and again, as the title of the talk says, sometimes that we use different words for this type of professional. So first of all, we're going to clarify what that is and what the demand is for that type of professional. And so Chris will start off providing that for us, and then really set the context for what we need to do in terms of educational programming. At that point, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the work we've been doing at NMC in terms of a community college program and how we've developed something a little different than what maybe the standard model is in terms of software development. Talk to you about some of the content and effective teaching models that we've incorporated there, and talk to you about where we're trying to go with that project throughout the state. And then Tom will finish up looking at the secondary perspective, taking a look at initiatives in the secondary level, and really opening up the conversation. Again, we really hope that this is kind of I guess a call to action to some point. I mean, once we define the context and the demand and kind of see some options out there, we'd like to get some dialogue going, especially from my standpoint, between the community college and the secondary, trying to understand how we can build better programs. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris. Chris, why don't you start off telling us a little bit about the demand for these occupations.
Great. Thank you, Keith. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the factors that are contributing to the demand for software developers. So one of the sources commonly used to measure the supply and demand of talent is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. For the period 2010 to 2020, the national job outlook for software developers system software is projecting to be 32% growth. Software developers applications is projecting 28% growth, and in comparison, the total for all occupations in the U.S. economy is projected to grow by 14%. Did I go? Okay. Sorry, I can't really see it that well there. Okay. In terms of Michigan, the job outlook for that same time period is projecting that software developers system software will actually grow by 37%. Software developers applications will grow by 23%. And then the total for all occupations in the Michigan economy is projected to grow by 8.5%. So even though the job outlook for both of the software developer occupations is comparable, whether you're looking at the national or Michigan data, the disparity in Michigan is going to be will likely be greater because of the modest 8.5% growth projections versus the 14% national growth projections for all occupations. Economic Modeling Specialist, Inc. is another source that we can use to measure actual job growth. For the 3-year period from 2010 to 2012, software developers system software had 9% growth. Software developers applications had 7% growth. And then during that same time period, the total for all occupations in the Michigan economy showed 4% growth. And when you take a little closer look at the job growth amongst the software developer occupations, there were 20,511 jobs in 2010, 21,357 jobs in 2011, and then although the final data for 2012 has not been released yet, EMSI is estimating that there will be 22,060 jobs. So one thing to look at here is the annual openings. The plus 1,065 is an average of the 2010 and 2011 annual openings, and is one placeholder that we use to estimate demand. But it's not, a real solid number in the sense that they factor in a number of things, including replacement hires, job vacancies, and so on and so forth. But again, it is a good placeholder that we can use for demand. And so what does the supply side look like? Well, for one LMI study that was recently completed by the Workforce Development Agency's IT and Media Cluster and the Labor Market Information and Strategic Initiatives Group, our analysis indicated that approximately 7,700 IT-related credentials were awarded in Michigan, compared to 7,700 openings across the IT industry as a whole, which at that point was based on projections from the BLS through 2018. At face value, there would appear that there's not that big of a gap. However, the 7,200 credentials includes everything from certificates to associates to bachelor's to master's. So when you think about the programs that have historically produced developer talent, you need to not only look at the overall number of completers, but also the type of programs and completers. So we've attempted to pare this down a little bit to focus on some of those traditional four-year programs, such as computer science, computer engineering, computer information systems, et cetera, that have, historically produced developer talent. And again, this is looking at the completer number for the last 3 years. For 2008, 2009, there were a total of 1,015 completers. For 2009, 2010, there were a total of 1,113 completers. And then in 2010, 2011, there were a total of 1,079 completers. So now think back to that previous slide and the figure I used, the 1,065 annual openings. Again, it appears that there isn't that big of a gap between supply and demand. In fact, the numbers would lead you to believe that the system is churning out enough graduates to meet industry demand. Well, this assumes a couple of different things, including that all of the openings, the annual openings, are entry level and would actually be something that a new college graduate could walk into. That all computer science and computer engineering graduates are choosing to enter the software developer profession, and none take jobs as database administrators or hardware engineers or any of the other career options that are available to them as those types of graduates. That Michigan retains every single one of our college graduates, when in fact we know that this is not the case, since these are highly coveted graduates being recruited by companies all over the U.S. and the world. And that the gap will decrease or remain constant when the overwhelming evidence is that demand is likely to outpace supply. So one thing's for certain, I think we all agree that something needs to be done to come up with more and better ways to grow the base of developer talent. So this slide shows some of the hottest jobs for college graduates, where the jobs will be in 2018. Here 4 occupations from IT, including both of the software developer occupations, occupy the 5 through 8 slots. Michigan Hot 50 is a similar list put out by our Labor Market Information and Strategic Initiatives Group. Again, 6 IT occupations make the list, including computer software engineers applications at number 20, and computer software engineers system software at number 29. And I know it's kind of hard to see here, but if you look at all these education jobs at the top of the list there. So all of you teachers out in the audience, you could help us out a little bit by not flaunting your lavish lifestyles and giving us a chance to recruit some of these folks into these IT fields. Even though I know they're not making anywhere near the money that you guys are making as educators, right? So maybe a more telling indicator. Excuse me, that's just, yeah. So even a more telling indicator of demand is LMI, or real-time LMI. This is a DICE survey asking employers what skills they're recruiting or hiring for. And as you can see, there's things like Java, J2EE, software developer engineers, mobile developers, .NET developers, project managers, and business analysts. You look at this list, and what I think this is really indicative of the skills and needs, that relate to the entire software development life cycle. Certainly there's still going to be a need for programmers and coders, but increasingly, I think there's going to be a premium put on the more versatile architect type roles. Also, when we did our analysis through our IT report that we did with our labor market information group, we looked at help wanted online. And some of the key skills that employers are seeking included project management, structured query language, quality assurance, and software development. And then there's mobile. The proliferation of mobile devices and the growth of mobile application development represents another one of those just game changers. Available LMI doesn't really differentiate between the traditional software developers and mobile application developers, but it's safe to say that the demand for developer talent will only increase as mobile computing continues to grow in popularity and gain market share. To give you an example of how this plays out in the broader talent pool, if you go out and scour any of the job boards, you'll see hundreds of openings for iOS developers. Well, Apple is almost entirely responsible for artificially creating this demand because of the demands that they place on the apps that go into their Apple iStore, which they require are all developed using the native iOS tools, primarily Objective-C, Xcode using Objective-C, excuse me. Well, the businesses still want something they can put in the Apple App Store, so when they go to an IT service provider and ask them to build them an app, the firms don't have the developer bandwidth to really meet the customer's need, so they go out and try to recruit that talent in the available labor pool. We are, however, seeing movement towards what are referred to as cross-platform or platform-agnostic tools, which use HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript to create apps that can be pushed out through a web interface and onto any device or operating system. Well, this is probably an acceptable and definitely a more affordable option for more businesses. And the other thing that it does is provide a significantly lower level of entry for folks looking to break into the application development or mobile application development field. That being said, iOS and Android will still continue to be a significant and rather lucrative part of that market. Whoops, I think I actually goofed up one of my slides. But in terms of the state response to respond to the developer shortage, we're doing a number of things on a number of different fronts. Shifting Code is a career transition program where we take individuals with some baseline IT skills and put them through a short-term training program in combination with some sort of an internship practicum in an effort to upgrade their skills to fill some unmet need as identified by industry. So we have done pilots on .NET development, software testing, Android programming. Also, last year, in an effort to kind of respond to that demand for iOS developers, we partnered with the Workforce Intelligence Network here in Southeast Michigan to put on an iOS train-the-trainer program, where we had invited community colleges from throughout the region to nominate adjunct faculty to go through a 40-hour technical training on iOS. And then following the training, the participating faculty from the community colleges worked together to develop common course materials and curriculum, which they now can use to leverage in combination with a mobile iOS lab to teach their own iOS programming courses. We're also working with a group called Develop Detroit, another group here in Southeast Michigan that claims to be able to take anyone and turn them into an iOS developer in just 3 months. So their program, although it's still in its infancy, is showing a lot of promise, and we're working with them, again, to try to align some of our initiatives at the state that are focused on training with some of the things that they're trying to do. We're also working with Automation Alley here in Detroit and the Capital Area IT Council in Lansing to try to align our initiatives with some of their H-1B grant programs. For instance, we're currently exploring creating beginner-level training programs in C number, C sharp, object-oriented programming, et cetera, that could be a potential on-ramp to more advanced .NET and Java options available through Automation Alley's Technical Talent Development Program. And of course, we're working closely with Northwest Michigan College and a few of the other neighboring colleges up there on a new developer consortium project, which Keith's going to get into a little bit during his portion of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Keith.
Can I get an idea just who we have in the audience? How many administrator type people do we have out there? Okay, others are instructor, staff, faculty? Okay, great, so mostly instructors, okay. All right, so as Chris said, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, well, first of all, what I see in terms of demand and what I see happening in Traverse City. So again, we're not Metro Detroit, relatively small area, but I'd like to talk a little bit about, the demand and what I see happening in the industry. And then go into what we've tried to put together in terms of an alternate model or some other model I'd like you to at least consider. And then we'll open it up for conversation. But I think all of us have probably smartphones in our pockets. So you saw the supply side, and really the minimal change you saw in the supply from 2008 to currently. But yet, if you think about all the technology that you are wearing now in your pocket, the different devices you have, whether it's a tablet computer, whether it's a cell phone, and of course the thing I'm getting involved with now are the small robotic systems. There's small controllers that we can buy for $60 that are essentially a basic, whole basic computer on them, and you're going to see those devices embedded in anything and everything. So we know that the use curve is going way up, that the number of devices is going way up, and everybody expects data, they expect applications. I mean, you expect to come to the hotel and be able to pull up a map of the hotel, maybe check out the conference and do scheduling online. I mean, those expectations are just there, and so we need people to fill those roles and to provide that software. So a lot of the work that I've been doing is I try to provide the framework based on this Pathways to Prosperity document. It's getting a couple years old. It was February 2011, but this was done by the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and it was really talking about meeting the challenges of how we fill these technical jobs. What is America going to do to fulfill the high demand for these high-tech people in these professions? And of course, one of the things it talks about is President Obama, the fact that he put out this vision in 2009 about everybody needs to have post-secondary education to attain some sort of post-secondary credential. Of course, I think one of the challenges there is a lot of people interpreted that to say that what we need to do is have everybody go out and get a four-year university degree. And again, it points out that, we're talking about just some sort of post-secondary, could be community college, could be 4-year, also a little vocational training apprenticeship. Again, something beyond that high school diploma. And so what this study really talks about, I mean, there's several different things in this piece of work that was provided by Harvard, but really a key point of it for me was the fact that they said that our current educational system just places too much emphasis on this idea that there's a single pathway, that we're going to go through a high school college prep program, we go to the university, we get a bachelor's of science degree in computer engineering or computer science. So we've got that path laid out. That's kind of been the traditional path, yet they quote the statistic of only 30% of the young adults successfully complete that pathway. So what are we going to do about this? We need to have clear pathways into this profession, and we also need to have multiple pathways into this profession. So that's really what I think is unique about our program and what we've started to work on here at NMC is the idea that we're providing an alternate path. Yes, we need computer science programs. Yes, we need computer science graduates. But can we do something different? Can we provide an educational model or educational program that fills some of this high demand, and rather than just trying to shove more people through the same pipe that we've already had, let's provide an alternate path that can fulfill some of these jobs as well. So the slide I've got right up here, it's titled Differentiating Computer Science and Software Developer. Again, those are kind of my two terms that I use to kind of categorize these two models. But at the top, I've got this labeled as current state. Again, if we think about, if you ask somebody right now, how do you become a software developer? What do you need to do? Most likely people are going to tell you that, well, you're going to start in the secondary level. You may do some programming at the secondary level, and there is actually an AP exam provided at the secondary level, computer science AP exam. However, it's not very well utilized, but it is available. Of course, from there you could transfer directly into a bachelor's computer science program, maybe take that AP credit with you, a single class, or possibly go into the community college. Now, you could go to NMC with that computer science AP exam and get credit for a programming class in my math science program at my college. Okay? But that's really not connected to what I'm doing at all. Again, this is kind of the traditional math, science, engineering path. Of course, from there, you're going to go into professional employment. But a reality of the IT workplace is certification. And we really started to look at this, probably 5-6 years ago. We really took a look at this. There was a document that came out by the Department of Ed, talked about parallel pathways, and it was really questioning, why has this whole thing of IT certification evolved? What was wrong with the traditional education model that it wasn't serving the business and industry to the extent that they said, all right, we're going to go out and build our own credentialing system, our own curriculum, our own assessments, and provide that in parallel to what's happening in the educational system. And so we've really taken a look at those certifications and really built those into the program. We've realized that's a reality, and what we've done is said, okay, rather than provide a program that's really focused at that university computer science program in terms of targeting our curriculum and using that to define what our curriculum is, let's use the IT certifications. Let's use the outcomes that are being defined by the industry. They're international outcomes. And let's focus on those and basically create a leaner path into the profession by preparing students for those IT certifications. So this is the kind of model that we're building, or we've built at NMC, and we're looking at pushing out to several other community colleges around the state. Again, at the secondary level, we're looking at pushing these fundamental certifications down to that level. Now, specifically what I'll be talking about is we are all focused on .NET, which is the Microsoft stack of development. And I'll talk a little bit later about why that is, why we focused on that. But what we're looking at is pushing that fundamental certification down here to the secondary level. And so that's our early college model, or dual enrollment. I mean, there's lots of words out there. I never know quite what the right word to use is, but the point is there's no reason why students can't get college credit in high school. And we've always had that. In fact, NMC had a lot of articulation agreements with area career tech centers and high schools. But one of the challenges I think we had at that is, how do you bridge that gap between high school and community college? Typically it was a piece of paper and there was some outcomes listed on a piece of paper that represented a course, and there was a discussion with an instructor and with a handshake, and that was the articulation agreement. And it was used somewhat, but not a whole lot. Again, the advantage of this is we've got this external body, these subject matter experts that are put together for us by Microsoft that have defined what these outcomes are. And so there's no longer the question in terms of what we should be teaching. The what is defined, and what we can focus on is how to teach it. And if students come through the secondary level with those credentials, that's no problem then. We can just take them that much further at the community college. So again, it makes that transition from secondary to the community college just that much cleaner, because again, there's this external body saying, here are the objectives, here are the outcomes we're expecting, and there's assessments in place to evaluate what those are. Of course, from us then, from our standpoint, what we're trying to do is take them from this entry-level stuff, which is called MTA, Microsoft Technology Associate. It's relatively new. It's only been around for about 2 years. NMC was one of the founding educational partners with this certification. But really what we want to get them at is a professional level of certification. So MCSA is Solutions Associate. And what we want to do then is get them into that professional level. Now they might go through entry-level employment and then do that, or hopefully as we scale this program out, we'll be able to get students into this professional level of certification immediately. From then they're in professional employment, and we're not saying that the bachelor's degree and the advanced degrees are not important. They certainly are. They're certainly critical to your career pathway. But what we're trying to do is, again, focus on this concept of lean. The idea of lean is used a lot in manufacturing and healthcare. And what we're trying to think about in terms of education, what we'd like to do is provide a very efficient, effective path into this profession, a lot less cost to the student from what it takes to go through a university program, a lot quicker, and a lot more focused. In other words, we want to get those students deep in terms of understanding what it is to be a software developer. Once they're out professionally, as a professional, then again maybe returning, getting that MBA or Bachelor's of Science, again advanced degrees from that standpoint. But it's later on in the process that we're looking at those university programs. So again, targeted at the certification. Now that's got a lot of detail on it. What this is the skill development roadmap from Microsoft. As I said, we've selected Microsoft for a couple reasons. First of all, there are a lot of, again, .NET is the Microsoft stack of development tools. There are a lot of companies in our area that focus on .NET development. And as we went through a program of study that was funded by the state about 3 years ago, and as we took a look at that, we had that general conversation. Should we do open source Java and PHP and MySQL, or should we look at the Microsoft side of things? And when we took a look at the resources that were available, the tools that were available, both educational tools and developer tools, and the fact that it ties very tightly together, and the fact that there was this very, very clear certification path, we elected to go with the Microsoft .NET stack. And the idea for us is really that what we're trying to do, our ultimate goal is make this solutions architect, somebody that can put a piece of software together, that understands the components, can solve the problems, use the industry tools, and put together a solution. So what I think about in that is in terms of depth in the program. So we try and create a lot of depth in the program. We're doing more than just teaching you how to do an if-else statement in 3 different languages. Okay? We use a single language. We get past conditionals. We want to get into more advanced sort of topics and work towards these certifications. The concept we have then is if we get you deep into understanding what it is to be a solutions architect, that if you want to move, I think about it being a horizontal move. If you want to move over to be an iOS developer or use Java, using the LAMP stack instead of the Microsoft stack, that transition is pretty easy, because what we're talking about is more, just learning syntax and tools and that sort of thing, but the structure and the concepts are all solid. So again, deep as possible. So specifically, this is Microsoft's complete map in terms of going both on the IT pro or networking side and also software development. Of course, what we want to focus on is really just the database and the developer paths. And so if you take a look at, like, if we start at the database path, this is probably one of the first things we'll try and scale out to other community colleges. There's a single MTA exam. So what this path would look like is you probably start in a Microsoft Access class. So you have to understand the fundamentals of database. Microsoft Access is a great tool to learn on. And so once you have a Microsoft Access class, the next class would typically be some sort of SQL Server, SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server class, where you learn the basics of structured query language. Okay. And that then is tied into this MTA certification 364 database fundamentals. So the student leaving, essentially a two-class sequence can leave with this certification, Microsoft Technology Certification in Database Fundamentals. And you can see that the next thing then is an MCSA level exam, a professional level exam, 461. Now again, in our program, we're not there yet, but our hope is as we scale this curriculum out to other community colleges, we'll get enough critical math to offer those level of certifications, maybe as summer programs or something in addition to the standalone program. That one's pretty, efficient. I mean, you can become a database administrator pretty quickly. The developer path is just a longer thing. So that's one thing that you need to kind of, keep in mind as you take a look and compare maybe IT pro networking to developer to database, is the developer stuff, it's hard stuff. There's a lot of detail, there's a lot of technology involved, and it just takes a while to mature a developer. You can see that some of the exams down here, it's a little small, but the exams that we're incorporating into the program, software development fundamentals, Windows development fundamentals, web development fundamentals, .NET fundamentals, and then HTML5 application and development fundamentals. So again, those are all certifications. I'll show you the program here in a minute. But again, those are all certifications that are acquired by the student as they move through the community college. And then again, at the end of the program, they should be ready for over here, like this 480 exam is programming with HTML5 and JavaScript, which is those, which represents the skill set required to provide those like responsive mobile applications. And I'll show you that here in a minute. So that's a real critical skill right now in high demand. This is what our program looks like, again, just as a model. But at the top, we've got kind of our programming strand up here. It goes from a basic logic and design class. There is an entry-level certification there, followed by a specific language class. Again, it's C#. So really, how do you create an application? Followed by object-oriented programming. There's another exam there. And then solutions development. Now, this class is really interesting because it provides a lot of the tools that businesses are looking for, things like source code control or test-driven development, a lot of those more advanced concepts that typically students wouldn't even see until after a computer science program. But again, we're using these tools and embedding these tools that are used by the companies right now in a 3-credit course. Down below here, we've got the data strand. So again, we'd like them to come in. These are prerequisites over here. We'd like to have a student have some Excel experience before they get into a Microsoft Access. That's a good transition to go from Excel to Access. But once they've got that Access class, they're ready for the SQL Server class. And again, there's that 364 exam, basically the fundamentals of using a database. So SQL language, relational data, again, pretty good assessment in terms of, again, just a fundamental database class. In the middle, this is one that is very quickly, evolving very quickly. In fact, this class right here is brand new. We'll be offering it in the fall for the first time. We had, just a short time ago, just the HTML5 course. Actually, it was XHTML. That's just been updated to HTML5 and CSS. We've got a new JavaScript class that's only about a year old. And now we had a ASP.NET server-side class here, but the big thing that is evolved, as we've talked about, is mobile. So how do you program mobile devices? Yes, you can do device-specific development, such as iOS, Apple stuff, the Android market. Of course, there's the Windows Phone, which is picking up some steam, but still is certainly a minimal player. But how do you develop apps for those? And again, we think, and a lot of supporters that we have think that we're really going to evolve very quickly into this device-agnostic development platform that's based on HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. In fact, if you take a look at the new Windows, I don't know if you've seen Windows 8, but if you take a look at that new, I call it Metro interface, but apparently that's not the right name anymore, but the tiles that you see on a Windows 8 environment, those can all those Windows 8 applications can all be programmed with just HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. They expose a WinJS library that allows you to do all that. So that set of tools can be leveraged across any device. So that's really going to become what I see as kind of the backbone of the program right here. Again, it's evolving very quickly. We're still doing the server-side class, but that's going to do some modifications as well. But you know, right there, that's core stuff that's in very, very high demand. Of course, we've got other IT networking, you know, project management and gen ed stuff as part of the program as well. So it is a full associate's degree, but again, every place you see this asterisk is an MTA certification that the students complete as part of the class. So these are not optional, they are included as part of the final exam for the class. Oh, yeah, that's cool. So again, what we've tried to do is develop something different, a different path than standard computer science, university computer science program. So I see it as a lean educational path. Again, in 2 years, we're making people that are in very high demand. You know, it's clearly defined. So these objectives are international objectives. Microsoft comes together, they get subject matter experts together, and they define what should a beginner know. And then provide some curricular support as well. And again, that provides us a way to have programs across different colleges, down into community colleges, maybe eventually up into university programs. And it's all clearly defined and you know, consistent as we move from program to program. It's very high tech in terms of we're going for that deep dive. We're trying to get some very high degree of skills and tools involved in the program. High demand as far as we are quite small. So I only had like 7 students last year in my second tier class. All of those students had to come back this year and still finish out some gen ed and a class or two to kind of finish out the degree. But last year when they left that last web class, that server-side ASP.NET class, everybody had a job or an internship before the class was over. And in fact, 2 of them went out for what they thought was an internship interview, and it actually turned into a job interview. And so they're all working. Very high pay, so a 2-year community college, and you know, several of them started at 30. Somebody's making 50 or is about to make 50. You know, that just tells you the kind of demand and the kind of pay that these people are getting. Again, just 2-year program. Of course, it makes it a little challenge when we're looking for an instructor now in terms of what we, again, pay educators versus what we pay, you know, professionals. And you know, those are some of the challenges we're going to have, is how do we bring people in to teach these programs when there's such high demand and high pay, high skilled jobs. The question is the other aspect of this, you know, what about high quality? And that's the other piece that I think is just so critical in this model, is the fact that we've been able to not only produce a lean pathway, but also incorporate some real valuable quality improvement process as well. So I've been using another piece that I've just started to kind of reference and use a lot, is this MET project. This was actually just finished, or I think year 3 of it was finished, by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but it's about measures of effective teaching. And it's mostly focused at secondary and talks a lot about how do you ensure that there's effective teaching going on in the classroom. And I think as we take a look at this, I use this one diagram to talk about, you know, well, how do we do that at the community college? You know, what does classroom assessment look like at the community college? And what does it look like for these technical occupations versus what does it look like in your standard, you know, STEM curriculum, science, math, English, and so forth? You know, first of all, and what they propose is that the best model, and they've got all the research data to kind of support this, is a balanced approach in terms of assessing the classroom. It includes student perceptions, student assessments, and teacher assessments. So, and they went through several different scenarios and came up with the fact that you know, a balanced approach using these 3 is optimal. If I think about what we've done at the community college, you know, for the most part, we're over here. I mean, what happened as far as classroom assessment in my classroom? Well, there's a student evaluation given at the end of the year, at the end of the semester, and students give me a smiley face, right? I mean, they're essentially just saying, yeah, they really liked me, or they kind of liked me, or they didn't like me. You know, the student really isn't in the position to evaluate the content of the class. I mean, they're just learning the content. And, you know, so really we were limited in terms of our evaluations to student perceptions. If we think about student assessment, there was no, you know, state standardized test to take in something like IT. There was no standard that we could look at and say, well, how did you perform on this? Now, as soon as you empower the student to take that examination as part of the final exam and get those results, you know, then they can come back here and say, well, geez, what did I think about that teacher? How well was I prepared? How well did I do on that certification test? So again, it gives the student you know, very objective data in terms of their performance. It does a nice thing from a teacher standpoint is it totally disconnects me from the assessment process. So you know, we always talk about you know, sage on the stage versus guide on the side and learning coach and that sort of thing. But I can tell you when I started implementing this model, I can tell you the change in the classroom because all of a sudden I was the coach. I was helping them go to the testing center, and although we could do these certification tests in class, we separate it, we disconnect it, and we put it at the testing center. We want to emulate that model that they'll have as a professional. They go to the testing center, they sit in the box, they take the test, they get their results. You know, I'm the coach to try and help them pass that. And so, you know, I'm no longer, you know, assessing their ability. I'm helping them on this, you know, master this content. So that's been a great addition to the program in terms of having, again, essentially a standardized assessment that is internationally recognized. This is a part that we're just starting to understand, I think, a little bit better, and that's teacher assessment. I mean, the first thing we started to do is, as we brought in, you know, community colleges have to rely on a lot of adjunct instructors to provide our classes. As we bring in these adjuncts, I mean, the first question you have is, are you qualified to teach this content? And how did that happen in the past? Well, we'd sit down over, you know, the conference table, we'd talk about what this person did. You know, do you know this stuff? Yep, I know it. Okay, you ready to teach this? Yep, I can teach this. We'd cut them loose in the classroom, and it would work sometimes, but guess what? You know, sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes after the fact, we found out that students, or I'm sorry, adjunct instructors, or maybe possibly even full-time instructors, don't have the skill sets that we know or that we are expecting. Okay? I mean, if you think about you administrators, I mean, how well are administrators able to go in and look at IT curriculum or any sort of technical curriculum and really evaluate the strength of the curriculum? I mean, chances are that's not the case. You know, math and English, yeah, probably. You know, technology stuff, that's probably not the case. So this also gave us a tool, first of all, just to take a look at, can the teacher, can maybe this adjunct coming in, can they pass the assessment? Can they pass the test that they're supposed to prep the students for? And if they can't, what are the areas of weakness? The other thing that we've been able to do then is, again, the power of this MTA certification, and we've done lots of certification. The MTA thing is relatively new for us because it's only been out for a couple of years. But the power of this is that we get aggregate data back on the classroom. Now, we've been doing CompTIA and Cisco and, you know, more of the IT pro networking credentials for a long time. But we, to this date, don't get the data back from those testing services to really tell us how do our students perform on those assessments. You know, about the best we can do is just kind of ask the students. So a real value added to these MTA certifications that are provided by Certiport is the fact that they give us these aggregate scores back. So again, if you think about a standard quality improvement model of plan, do, check, and adjust, you know, plan the curriculum, do the curriculum, check it, we do these assessment tests, and again, because we can pull these aggregates out, we can take a look at that classroom, we can take a look at different situations and see, well, how did the students perform? Or if they performed well on most of the objectives, what was the weakest area, and what can we do to improve the curriculum? So again, it's a very strong quality improvement process that we've been able to build around these certifications. It's not everything. I mean, it's not the whole picture. They're doing these certification tests now at, you know, kind of the short-term training, drawing a blank on the word right now, but you know, short-term training commercial sort of deal where they come in for for 2 weeks and take the training and pass the test. So it's good for from the aspect that it quantifies knowledge, but what can the students do? So it's important that we not only understand what they know, but what they can do, and so we are building a portfolio model where they build projects as they go through the curriculum as well. We talk to the businesses, and they say, well, the certification is the thing that gets them the interview. They got certifications, we'll talk to them. Now, the first thing we're going to ask them when they come in the door is show us your portfolio, show us your code. We want to see what kind of code do you write. Is it spaghetti code? Is it structured? What kind of tools do you know? Those are the next questions. So it's important that we have not only the knowledge piece, but the performance piece as well, the portfolio along with that. This is an example of the aggregate scores that we are able to get back from this exam. So this happens to be for that database test that I talked about, database administration. You can see over here I had 15 students pass it, 2 of the students fail it. So right away I've got a pass rate of 88%. So we've got that metric. But additionally, notice down here, and it varies between exams. They're usually between 4, 5, or 6 objectives per exam. But we can see aggregate scores for each of these individual objectives. So down here, understanding data storage, that's the lowest one, 71. And whenever I give this exam, that's actually my class, whenever I give that exam, that always tends to be the lowest one. And so I'm always asking myself, well, how can I make that better? And that one happens to have database normalization in it, and that's always a tough concept for students to grasp. So I can almost guarantee, I don't get to see exactly what they did on exam questions, but I'm pretty sure it's the normalization questions that they struggle with. And so again, I try and improve the curriculum, try and do more with that particular area. But again, that's the sort of assessments we get back so we can take a look at the class. How did the class do? How did this class do to last year's class? I make a change in my curriculum. Did it impact the scores? Or if students aren't passing, what's wrong? What's going on? So again, as I said, there's a lot of certification exams out there, especially like in the IT Pro side, networking side, but one way we got into this MTA certification is I went to Microsoft and I said, well, how come there's so much stuff over there in the networking in terms of certification, and on the developer side, there's almost nothing out there in terms of entry-level certifications. And that's really when this MTA got kicked off and how we got involved at a very early level. So right now what we're trying to do is scale this out to other community colleges. Chris is helping us kick off this developer consortium project. Again, our goal is to make this 2-year software development curriculum that's shared across a consortium of community colleges. Again, centered on this IT certification model, and centered on this idea that we can use quality assessment using these exam results. We can evaluate how we're doing based on getting these aggregate scores. And we also want to make sure that we're integrating business and industry professionals, user groups immediately. So we want to get workforce development, people involved, again, employers involved early on in the program and develop much more of a partnership, as well as push that down into the high schools and get the high schools involved. So again, we've got that continuum of educational program across secondary and post-secondary and out into the professional world and work. These are the consortium colleges: Grand Rapids Community Colleges, Lake Michigan College, North Central Michigan College, Northwestern Michigan College, and West Shore. So they're all kind of on the west side of the state. There's a lot, as Chris indicated, there's a lot going on in the Metro Detroit area, southeastern Michigan. This is obviously a little more remote. One of the things we need to recognize about software developers is you can do it from anywhere. So we're trying to develop this whole concept of telecommuter. Again, one of the adjuncts that work for me is a very high-end developer. He works for me, kind of as a favor because he likes to teach. But he literally writes code in his basement. He logs in at 1 o'clock for the team meeting. They do the little scrum meeting, and then at that point he's got his job for the day. He's offline developing code, checks his code in, and checks in with the team the next day. So, he's sitting in Traverse City making, 6+ figures, and, gets to live the wonderful life of Northern Michigan. So, it's very effective from that standpoint. It's also very scalable in the sense that, Chris talked a lot about job openings. And the thing I think you understand is if I've got those companies, I've got software development companies in town, if I give them a developer, they can take on more work almost immediately. I mean, all they need is a person and a laptop with some software on it. There's no more investment other than a person and a laptop. They buy that person, they grab a project, they get paid. Return on investment is the payback period is very, very short. So again, our goal here with this consortium, we're just getting it kicked off now in terms of trying to push it out to these other community colleges. Hopefully it is a pilot for other things that can happen around the state. But again, we want to get a common curriculum across 5 community colleges. Then we also, so I talk about that kind of scaling horizontally out into community college programs. We don't have a state community college system here in Michigan, so that means everybody kind of does their own thing. We're trying to get this consortium together, so we're doing the same thing. And then we want to scale it vertically. We want to get business professionals involved right away. We're working with Chris at Michigan Works. We're pulling in veteran services. How can we pull them into the process? And then, as I said, we want to work with secondary ed. So we want to involve area high schools, involve area career tech centers. If we can push this curriculum down earlier in the process, that just means we can get these developers that much further at the community college. So that's really the kind of the overall vision and goal of the project. So with that, I'd like to go over to Tom here, and he'll talk to you about secondary.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, I know most of you raised your hand that you were instructors of programs. Some of you are delivering programs at the secondary level right now. Just roll it up to the next. Let me see your hands again. Hi. How many are delivering any post-secondary deliveries? Okay. Where are you from?
Oakland Community College.
Okay. And what, out of those that had raised their hands, how many are CTE programs? Okay. Anybody in here that has applied for a new program in CTE for programming?
I did last year.
You did last year. Yep. This year is what I was looking at. Okay. Because kind of heading into this slide here, this is kind of the progression of what's going on. 2008, 2009 is where we're starting. The ITs were in Michigan, secondary level. They were immersed in the BMA area for those that are the secondary teachers. That's where the IT was. And then the ITs broke out. We're into 4 different SIPs. And we're focusing today on the programming SIP, which is the 110201. This is the growth. This is where we started back in 2008-9. Started with programs throughout the Michigan 19. There's the number of students that are being serviced. You can kind of see the growth that's going on here. A little drop last year. Don't know what happened, but you can see with the student, there's still a student growth there over on the right-hand column there. And then this is what's cool for me. Looking down here, right now we're under reviewing new program apps for programming, and there were 6 applications that came through. I'm the one that's reviewing those, and my recommendation is that they are all approved. So that's cool. So that number 27 will go to 33 for next year, assuming that nobody drops their programs. So that's kind of the growth of where we're at. Chris brought in what's out there, what we need. Keith is making that connection on the post-secondary, and I want to tell you right now, do reach out to these guys because they're a wealth of information, and Keith is really, as a secondary previous instructor and working with you as a secondary teacher, he's really in put us in a different position because here he is post-secondary reaching out to secondary, and we know that it's usually us trying to make that connection, trying to make that articulation, if you will, to the post-secondary. And so it's really, I think it's a cool opportunity. They've got some really neat things that are going on here. It's evolving. You can see what's going on here. It's evolving. And that's kind of where we're at. Can you just jump me up here? We, all 3 of us here, would like to get some feedback from you, questions. If you've got anything that you want to direct to any of us, or if we have amongst ourselves, because we're looking to you. You're out there doing it. You know what's going on. You know what your needs are. We know that we all have different needs. But here's Keith, post-secondary. He's got some ideas. Here we have Chris. He's got the vision of what's out there, what's from out of the industry side. So I'm just going to open it up. I have no guiding questions here.
I do have one. You were talking about the training the trainer certifications and the different ways to get educators in using these different materials and things like that. Is there a way that we can get on a list and try and get on to some of those? Because as a secondary teacher, that's one of the things that I lack. I can explain to my students what I know, but my expertise is based a couple of years ago in the technology field, and these new things that are coming out are very difficult, not to understand, but hard to explain to the students and show them these new things unless we come to the presentations like this. Is there a way that we can get in on some of these training the trainer?
Yeah, definitely. And if there's a listserv of all the different folks teaching the IT programs at all the different secondary schools, you can direct me to that, or if I can work with Tom to get access to that list, definitely will. And just general updates on the different projects and stuff that we're developing with our partners, just so you guys kind of understand what some of the needs are out there, some of the things we're doing to try to address those needs of the industry.
Could they email you to get on that list, sir?
Yeah.
Or would that be possible?
As far as the MTA stuff, if you want to contact me, I use an MTA, Microsoft Technology Associated group on LinkedIn. So if you go there, I host that, and that's where that's really the community site. If you're interested in these certification tests, and I can hook you up through Certiport to get some trials on that stuff. Take a look at the exams.
Is there any additional training out there as far as to try and get more information about the .NET stuff, other than sitting down with a book and following some tutorials?
So there's a lot of training resources out there that are just free. So I use there's a Channel 9 videos, Bob Tabor Channel 9 videos. I mean, he does great stuff. I'm doing a lot of flip the classroom sort of thing using those video resources. So it's pretty easy to come up with curriculum to support this. It's really about taking a look at the objectives and making sure the objectives match to what you're trying to accomplish with your program. And again, you've got to make the choice of it is Microsoft centric to a certain degree, but then if you take a look at something like the HTML, CSS, 3 JavaScript stuff, I mean it's a Microsoft exam, but that's a device agnostic platform, so it doesn't matter. It is provided by Microsoft. So.
In some of the early conversations about the iOS issue, too, we had conversations with Michigan Virtual University, and I believe they have some virtual courses that are designed for secondary educators that use some of these kind of cross-platform, platform agnostic tools like PhoneGap or App Accelerator to walk you through how to do mobile application development. So they may be another resource as well.
And you can use some of those Michigan Virtual University towards your updating your certification too. So one of the things that what Keith said is that he would like to have the students coming to him, or as they come to him with a higher level of knowledge, he can take them further down the road. That's what we would like at the secondary as well. We'd like to deliver him that student that we're jacking up. And what I'd like you to think about is, even as you go back to your local districts, and we know that we have our curriculums that we have to deal with, the Michigan Merit Curriculum and all that. But it is what it is, and see how you can work with that to deliver a program that can move your students to a higher level. I remember when I taught back earlier, and this is a number of years ago, our middle school, our junior high, taught computer programming. And the kids, what I could do with those kids when they came to me at the high school level was so much higher. And then they came to that program. And so it was really a step backwards for me on my programs. And that might be something that you can explore, is trying to take it down to a lower level so that you've got a higher level student coming to you, and then you can pass on that higher level student to Keith. And then Chris has shown us that there is that need out there, that we need to deliver. We're the pipeline feeding into these areas. And that's the way that we need to look at it and explore ideas and talk. Find those resources. What's going to help you? Talk to one another. Get on the listservs. If you're not on my listserv, we're just starting to get associated here together, doing some work. They've got some cool things going on. I'm on the front edge of just getting connected with them. They have some cool things that are happening. So, any other?
There's our
questions,
contact
comments?
information, yeah.
How do you recruit for your programs? Like, where do you do anything special to get your students? Because I find that's really the most difficult part of it. We have enough kids that will take the beginning. We have a visual basic course, but I teach the upper level ones at the school, and it's hard to kind of get that recruiting.
Yeah, we are struggling with that. We've got, quite a large attrition because they get involved in, web development instead of, the hardcore programming thing, or, again, sometimes they're very unpaid jobs. We're taking a look at some of that right now. The thing, to be honest, the thing I've been working on right now is integration with robotics. So I'm working with like the first area robotics teams, and we're incorporating some robotics stuff as a kind of a parallel to the programming curriculum. Because, looking at that laptop or even my cell phone and putting an app on that, cell phones are kind of cool, but as soon as you show them a robot, that excites them even more. So we're trying to do some of that over the next couple of years as well. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Because I know database, when I taught some of Microsoft classes, and we brought up Access, I mean, that was always the most difficult. Just to get them to motivate to do it, because I mean, it's much more difficult.
Well, and what we're hoping to do, as I said, as we scale up and get employers and user groups involved, I mean, that's my vision. Again, these are very early talks, but my vision is to try and get those professionals involved very early on so they can communicate to these students when they're in the Access class. Databases may be kind of dry, but realize that if you can create these kind of solutions, look at the employment path, the career path that's out here for you. So I think that we just need to do a better job on providing that vision to the students on, again, clarity. Where does this thing lead? What am I doing this for? And I don't think we've done a good enough job on that. We're over time. Any other final questions or comments? Please fill out your evaluations. Thank you very much for your time.
He has captured this, so
Look at the conference website. I've got video going today, so we'll get that up if you want to share it with anybody. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, does merchandise sales start now? Yeah.